Apollo 11 was the historic mission that landed the first humans on the Moon in 1969. The mission involved a complex spacecraft and a series of carefully orchestrated maneuvers to achieve its objectives. Here's a basic overview of how Apollo 11 worked. Launch. Apollo 11 was launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida on July 16, 1969. The launch vehicle used was the Saturn V rocket, which was one of the most powerful rockets ever built. The Saturn V consisted of 3 stages, each with its own engines, and it provided the thrust needed to propel the spacecraft into Earth orbit, and then toward the Moon. Spacecraft. The Apollo 11 spacecraft consisted of several components. Command Module CM. This was the main living and control area for the astronauts. It housed the crew during most of the mission and contained the necessary equipment for navigation, communication, and life support. The CM also contained the re-entry system for returning to Earth. Service Module SM. Attached to the back of the CM, the service module contained the spacecraft's main propulsion system, electrical power, and other support systems. Lunar Module LM. This was the spacecraft that actually landed on the Moon. It consisted of 2 parts: the descent stage, which provided propulsion and support for landing, and the ascent stage, which housed the crew and provided the means to return to the orbiting command module after the lunar surface mission was complete. Translunar injection, TLI. Once in Earth orbit, the Saturn V's 3rd stage fired again to propel the spacecraft out of Earth's orbit and toward the Moon. This maneuver, known as translunar injection, set Apollo 11 on its trajectory to reach lunar orbit. Lunar orbit insertion, LOI. Upon reaching the vicinity of the Moon, the spacecraft fired its engine again to slow down and enter lunar orbit. This allowed the crew to prepare for the descent to the lunar surface. Lunar descent and landing. Using the lunar module, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin descended to the lunar surface while Michael Collins remained in orbit aboard the command module. Armstrong piloted the LM to a landing site in the Sea of Tranquility, where they spent a little over 21 hours on the lunar surface, conducting experiments, collecting samples, and taking photographs. Ascent and rendezvous. After completing their tasks on the Moon, Armstrong and Aldrin returned to the LM and lifted off to rendezvous with Collins in lunar orbit. Once reunited, the crew discarded the LM and prepared for the journey back to Earth. Re-entry and splashdown. The spacecraft re-entered Earth's atmosphere protected by its heat shield and descended under parachutes to splash down in the Pacific Ocean, where it was recovered by a waiting aircraft carrier. Throughout the mission, precise navigation, communication, and life support systems were crucial for the safety and success of the astronauts. Apollo 11 represented the culmination of years of planning, engineering, and scientific endeavor, and it remains one of the greatest achievements in human history.